Back here on the Next Panel podcast in the wake of Moon Knight and Multiverse of Madness. Up first, we're talking Moon Knight, though. We're not going episode by episode. We're just doing an overall series overview of the show that ran from late March to just earlier this month. In early May, just wrapping up. But this was a very good show, and it took me a little while personally to get into it with WrestleMania happening around that point. But once I caught up with it, it was a very good show, and it ended in a very satisfying fashion, as we're going to talk about here today. Chris, we haven't spoken too much about Moon Knight in the few times we've spoken on the phone doing this podcast the last couple of weeks, but I'm excited to dive in with you here today on this show. Chris, what's going on, man?
Oh, not too much. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this. I feel like this is a show that didn't get as much conversation around it as a lot of the other Marvel shows have for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why. We'll get into that. And it wasn't because it was a bad show. I don't know if there were just other factors or I don't know. There's just been so much content as far as what they've been putting out in the last year. And all of it has been good to great to amazing. But it is interesting. This show hasn't gotten a lot of chatter online. But there was a lot of love for the series finale, or not series. Hopefully there's a second season, but season finale as we'll get into. But you're on the Twitter machine, BR_Dr. Phil. You're on Twitter, PhilDL616. What's going on, Phil?
I'm good.
We're going to be talking all about Moon Knight here today. So we got Tony on the line as well. Tony Mango, Anthony Mango. We've talked to you before, Anthony, here on the show under a different name when the show didn't have a name back in the early OG days of doing this show. I forgot what movie we reviewed with you a couple of years ago, but what's going on, man? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm always down to talk about this stuff.
What movie do you remember what movie we talked to you with about, or I don't remember. It was a couple of years ago.
It might have been one of the Spider-Man ones.
Oh, yeah, yes. I think it might have been, I think it was the second one as towards the when we were wrapping up. I might be wrong. I'd have to go back and check.
Could have been Far From Home, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Far From Home. I'd have to go back and check it out. But you are officially canon in our universe, my man, and I appreciate you coming on here today. You were telling me, what'd you say?
Not a variant.
not a variant, exactly. But yeah, no. Like I said, this is a very enjoyable show. So I'm glad Chris could get you on here to talk about it. I know we haven't spoke to you in a while here on the show about this sort of stuff. But taking a break from the wrestling here today. But like I said, we're not going episode by episode. I just want to talk about the show overall. Get your guys' thoughts. Chris, Phil, I know you guys talked about it with Tom just last week, so that's why we don't have to go too in depth with like the series or the season finale and just kind of do overall thoughts and whatever. But Chris, we'll start with you. Just talk a little bit about the show, your overall thoughts on it before we get specific with some stuff here, and how you kind of felt about it overall as far as whether you were satisfied or underwhelmed by the time it was over.
I was satisfied. I would definitely say the show left me wanting more, which is why hearing that it probably isn't getting a second season is a little upsetting. Like, they sort of never intended to do a second season is what I'm reading. So, yeah, but I liked it. I won't say it's my favorite Marvel series, but it definitely had a lot of strengths. I just think that this is a character that it's kind of I wouldn't call him an obscure comic book character because a lot of people know who he is, but he's not so mainstream that everybody recognizes the name Moon Knight right away. So I really think that this is a character that they have a lot of freedom to do interesting things with because of that, and I'd be really surprised if they didn't go back to it at some point.
Yeah, it really had a different vibe than anything else, not even just the shows they've done so far, but really anything else. And it wasn't as, supernaturally horror-esque as Multiverse of Madness was, which we'll get to in our next show. But there were elements of that, especially with like the first two episodes, and it kind of gave me the same vibes that WandaVision did, at least for me. And again, I'm coming at this from a completely different perspective, and that I enjoyed the show, but as someone who wasn't overly familiar with the character and the backstory, and I had a general idea of who Moon Knight was and kind of like the split personality sort of stuff. I was very confused during different parts of the show, especially early on. It kind of made more sense as we went along. And then the Jake stuff kind of came out and they made, they tied up that loose end and they revealed that at the end of the show in the post-credit scene. But I was just confused for a good part of it because like different parts of the show are like aren't actually happening. It's like dream sequences and you kind of have to connect the dots sort of thing. Again, that's just me talking as an absolute moron, as someone who probably just didn't understand as well as they probably could have. That's not the fault of the show, but I'm curious what your guys' thoughts were. But Phil, talk to me a little about the show, your thoughts on it, and if it was easier to follow for you than it was for me.
I thought it was a good show. I thought it did have a little bit of a lull after the fourth episode. I thought they had a really good twist, and then it was kind of like they had to rush into the next two episodes. I feel like it would have been better if they stretched this past the 6 episode concept.
Well, yeah, so like I was saying, it was like by the third episode when I really started to kind of get it more and understand it, and I really thought the show found its footing by like maybe the third episode or so. The thing isn't that I related it to WandaVision. WandaVision had 9 episodes, so it was a lot easier for that show to do it because it stretched that over the course of a little bit longer period of time. This was like a blink and you missed it sort of show, and a lot of their shows have been 6 episodes, like Hawkeye, I think was 6 episodes. Was Loki, right? So some of them have been.
Falcon and Winter Soldier was also 6.
Yeah, that was 6.
WandaVision's the only one that's been different.
Oh, and What If too, but I mean that's it was a little different.
Yeah, but WandaVision, each episode was shorter, so I think the total runtime for WandaVision is right around the same as these other shows. That's what's funny about it.
That is interesting. Yeah, no, these episodes are definitely on the longer side, and they pack a lot in there, and it had a different bit of a different pace than some of the other shows, which is, again, I don't want them to all to be the same thing, so I kind of like the variety there. But, Tony, I'm curious what your thoughts were on the show and your overall takeaways from it.
So, I mean, I am not a big Moon Knight fan in the sense of knowing, okay, this issue is introducing this character, and when you start hearing about the show and it's like Arthur Harrow is the villain, and I'm like, who the fuck's that? Like, and just kind of, I do a little bit of research here and there, but I was fully on board with this character in the first episode, and I got to admit, as the episodes went on, I was less and less interested in the show. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching it with my wife, who is not only a horror aficionado to the max, but also an archivist. So she loved the show, and it's was her favorite out of all these ones. I felt like by the end of this, I would have rather had seen a Moon Knight movie and kind of condensed everything and kind of taken 2 or 3 episodes out of the mix, because I agree there was that lull around episode 4 or so that I don't even remember the episode because I was falling asleep watching it. But I'm the type of person that if you give me an ambush bug movie, I'm going to be like, all right, I'll be there opening night. Like, if it's a Marvel or DC thing, I'm down. And I just ended up feeling like, there's a really cool thing going on here with this little Mark is in between the two, Jake as the devil and Steven as the angel and the shoulders kind of thing. Could have explored that, and instead we're kind of wasting some time with some other stuff. And I felt a little underwhelmed, to be honest.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's definitely not an unpopular opinion. I had seen mixed reviews on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed it overall, but I think for me anyway, I thought the character was cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing him be brought back in other stuff. And we'll talk about like what his future holds and where he can kind of factor in and stuff like that. To me, I thought the best part of the show was Oscar Isaac. I mean, playing the variety of roles that he did, obviously with the two different personalities with Steven and Mark, and then Jake in the last 10 seconds there. He was, to me, the best part of the entire show as far as his performance. And then Ethan Hawke as well, obviously, as Harrow. I thought he did a phenomenal job. And again, I'm not as well-versed in this stuff as any of you guys are, but from what I understand, Harrow's not a very big character in the comics, and they just kind of took, to kind of steal your word from earlier, Chris, like an obscure villain for Harrow, and I thought he turned into a compelling character. I thought the acting itself was phenomenal. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Oh, yeah. Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac both really put in powerhouse performances here. And the girl playing Layla, I cannot think of her name right now. Something Calloway or something like that.
May. I got it right here.
May Maui.
Okay, yeah. Like, I think she did a fantastic job, especially considering that her character felt very side character in the beginning, and then by the end, she's like a full-blown superhero too. She did a really good job. I think the biggest strength of this show was the performances. And we were talking about this a little bit on Tom's podcast too. Oscar Isaac really did a fantastic job changing his whole body language and facial expressions for Steve and Mark to the point where you could tell which one was which almost before he talked. Mm-hmm. Like, there's that scene at the end of the finale where he ends up back in the office with Ethan Hawke for a few seconds, and Steven says, like, do you believe in Khonshu and Amit and all that? And Harrow says no. and then you see his facial expression completely change, and before Oscar Isaac even says a word, it's like, oh yeah, that's Mark now. You can just tell. And then at the end, when they showed Jake, the way he smiles before he shoots Harrow in the head was like a completely different smile than what we saw from the other two dudes. Like, he really found a way to completely embody different characters in a way that I was really impressed with. But yeah, Ethan Hawke definitely deserves some credit for being a compelling villain who, again, Marvel has this problem where every time they get us a really good villain, they tend to kill it off. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was surprised they killed him off. Were you surprised? I mean, especially in the post-credit scene, too, because I'm thinking if he was going to die, they would have done it during the actual episode. I mean, he came close in a few different points, Mark/Steven did, in killing him. But no, they saved it for the post-credit scene, and we don't actually see him die, but I mean, it's kind of implied that he gets shot, and they can only show so much on a Disney Plus show. But were you surprised that they killed him off?
Yes and no. Like, that's the problem, is Marvel keeps killing off the best villains. But it seems like all the best villains are played by actors who don't want to do these, 10-year commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, what else are you going to do with the characters? You're going to break out the same god again and do the same story. It's pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah, but it is one of those things where, like, you can always find a way to make something interesting. Like, he could end up being something completely different in the next iteration we see. But I just think that Ethan Hawke is having this late career resurgence that's been great. Like, this Black Phone movie that he has coming out looks. I'm not a horror guy, but that looks so freaking creepy, and he looks like he just gives an amazing performance in that.
Wasn't he in another movie that just came out or is coming out? Or maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But it was like, what did you say? Black Phone? Is that what you said it was called, Chris?
I think that's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's a killer who traps this kid in his basement or something.
It's one of those movies that was supposed to come out in September, and then January, and then February, and now it's coming out in June. So it seems like it's already come out, but they just keep delaying it.
Yeah, I thought there was something else. I'm trying to look it up now. I thought there was a movie that was coming out like extremely soon that, let me see, 2022. The Northman. Isn't that movie out now or is coming out? Have you guys seen trailers for that at all or no?
Oh, isn't it?
I saw a mention of that on Twitter. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, there's like ads for it on Twitter and shit, but it is...
It's like a Viking movie or something.
Yeah, exactly. Nicole Kidman's in it, as we all see before the fucking AMC movies. She's in there. Anna Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke. Willem Dafoe is in. I forgot about that. Yeah, so I think that's out like now? March? Wait. Oh, no, April 22nd. Oh, wait, it already came out. What the fuck? I did not notice that at all. I was too focused on Doctor Strange. I didn't even realize that. No, yeah, he was great. Ethan Hawke was awesome. I thought he did a very good job with the villain role in this show. What were your thoughts, Phil, on Ethan Hawke as a hero in the show and how he performed and did and whatever?
I thought he was great. I thought he's one of the better actors on the show. I thought he had some of the best one-liners. I did feel like he was gonna be dead by the end of the show because, especially once he freed the god, I was like, yeah, he's too dangerous at this point to keep alive. And I feel like that's where Conchu was gonna come to that decision. Like, he's got to go.
So, again, I'm going to be jumping all over the place here, but they made it clear at the end there that Mark and Steven want nothing to do with Khonshu, but then he's with Jake at the end. I know that's his different personality. So is he still with them technically, although he's in this different, under the personality of Jake? Like, I was a little confused as far as where we go with here. Like, they still linked, or what was going on with that? Can you guys kind of help me out with that a little bit?
I was under the impression that he is still exactly linked. It's just that they're keeping that secret from him because they don't even really know about Jake yet. Like, if you remember when they're in the asylum, they're looking through the different doors and checking out the different rooms, and there's like a sarcophagus or something where somebody's trying to get out of it. It's kind of implied that that's the Jake persona.
Yeah. Plus, there were 2 or 3 blackouts that Steven and Mark
didn't know. Yeah.
By.
Yeah. So if they were to do another season, I would assume that it would be like, why do we keep blacking out? And that's not you. Is that you? No, that wasn't me. That kind of thing, until they discover the Jake personality and, hey, you lied to us this whole time, Khonshu. I thought you were going to let us go. And then he'll be like, well, tough shit.
It was also when he was talking to Steven and Mark, like right before the big finale fight, he did specifically say, I will agree to release the two of you. So, like, he knew deep down, like, I still have Jake, so I can lie about this and not really be lying.
I could see that. Yeah, that would be one way to keep him around. But, yeah, I mean, just going back to what I was saying earlier, again, this is going to sound like a dumb question, but, like, what part of this was reality? Like, with the stuff at the end where they kill Harrow and he comes out of the mental hospital. I thought the whole mental hospital thing wasn't real, and that was just supposed to be a different reality. Like, what part of that was real and what wasn't? That's what I was confused by personally.
Well, the hospital at the end wasn't exactly the same. I think that's how you were supposed to know that one was real.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And then, so he's not. Are they not actually dead? They're not actually dead, right? Because they both got killed at certain points. Both Jake and Steven, that is.
Well,
They got shot, or they came back to life, or something.
Mark is back to life now because Khonshu healed him when he like re-entered his body.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the thing that confused me a little bit was all the stuff in the asylum that we saw originally was sort of the pre-show to the afterlife. Like the afterlife is the pay-per-view. The asylum was the pre-show.
That's funny.
And then he ended up back in there for a minute in the finale. And I was like, so is that conversation with Harrow taking place in his head right now? Like, that seemed a little misplaced to me. And that confused me a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I
always
didn't understand.
figured the asylum stuff was in his head. I assumed that from the very beginning. And so when he went back there, it kind of confirmed that for me.
Okay.
But, like, the fact that Tauret was there and then brought him from there to the afterlife is why I thought, because she even said, like, oh, this is the duat, it just manifests as something. I've never seen a mental ward before, but there's a first time for everything. Like, that's why I thought that was all just him manifesting that, but it was the afterlife. That's why I was confused why he ended up back there later when he was already alive again. But I guess, he's a fractured mind, so maybe his mind was just using that as a coping mechanism or something.
With all that being said, do you think this is a show that would be best watched that would make more sense on a second time around? I mean, I think the first episode, they make it pretty clear there's someone else. He has a different personality.
I've watched it through more than once.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did it help your viewing? Like, did it help you understand it more after that?
Not really. Like, because I feel like that's the only thing about it that confused me. Everything else made sense to me on first viewing.
Yeah, it's hard for me to follow, but I can understand that, though.
I'm pretty sure it's a rule of cool. They thought that it would be a cool scene, and they're like, don't question it. It's astral plane type nonsense. Otherworldliness you shouldn't understand anyway. So
apparently there was some kind of planned cameo for this show that got scrapped.
With the Eternals.
That's what it was, yeah. And
now that's a movie that shouldn't have been a movie. If you make Moon Knight a movie and you make Eternals a TV show, both I think are better in the grand scheme of things. Because that movie was rushed as all hell. A bunch of characters that you could never get connected to because they just go, this is the fast girl. Moving on.
That was the movie Marvel thought was going to win them some Oscars for some reason.
They should have watched the movie first.
Well, they're like, Chloe Zhao just won some Oscars for this other movie, so let's bring her in, and then let's cast all these, like, prestige actors, and, yeah, like, I don't have as much hate for the Eternals as a lot of people. In fact, I think it got better for me on a second and third viewing, but it's just, you're right, like, this felt more like, the Eternals felt more like something that should have been a series. Like, each episode could have been devoted to a specific character, and then the finale is when you bring them all together for the big fight or something. But I think Moon Knight, if they were going to make it a movie, they probably could have made it more succinct. But I feel like had this show been 8 episodes, they could have really dug deep into the character and made it much better.
I'm curious. Do we know what goes into their plans of making each show? Okay, this is going to be 6. This is going to be 9. This will be 8 or whatever. Like, do they ever say?
Seems like 6 is just the standard length for all of them except WandaVision. Like the cartoon being different just has to do with the fact that cartoons are easier to produce.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like all their live action shows, from what I understand, are going to be 6. Like Obi-Wan, I believe, is going to be 6.
I thought it was more for some reason. I thought it was like 7 or 8, but I might be wrong. I know Peacemaker, that's not Disney, but that was like 7 too or something like that. But yeah, for some reason I thought Obi-Wan was more.
How much was Mandalorian normally?
That was
I think
8.
that might have been 10.
The first one was like 10, I think. I'm thinking of Book of Boba Fett too, but yeah, that was definitely more than
the second season of Mandalorian was shorter.
The second season?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up right now.
The second
Looks
season,
like
I think, was
8 and
6.
8. According
Was
to
it
Wiki.
really?
The second season was 8 episodes?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. For Mandalorian. Okay, I'm thinking, honestly, I'm literally thinking of Book of Boba Fett. I honestly, because I mix up the two, because the Mandalorian was obviously in that too, and they just kind of
Book
merged
of Boba
together.
Fett has a Mandalorian episode in it. So.
Yeah.
Basically 2.
It's basically Mandalorian season 2.5, so.
Yeah.
How many episodes did that have? Did the Book of Boba Fett have?
Was that 7?
That might have been the 6 or so range.
Okay. That one went by quickly. Yeah, I guess 6 is just the standard, and I agree, though. I do think this would have worked better as a movie, and I do think Eternals would have, especially with the amount of characters. Holy shit, I mean, they had like 1 million characters in that movie. I think if you dedicate each episode to a different character and kind of getting to know them a little bit better and invest in them, I think it would have definitely worked out better. But
So how crazy is it that the guy who played Druig is also the Joker? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of actors have done Marvel and DC, but like within a 12-month period?
To be fair, he's unnamed, unseen inmate from Arkham. They keep trying to be like, no, he's not necessarily Johnny. Come shut up. He is, you know. It looks like Book of Boba Fett was 7 episodes, so if you take out the one Mandalorian one, that's your standard 6.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah, well, that's actually a good question. Are there any actors that have done both Marvel and DC within that short span of a time? I know Yondu has obviously done both in Suicide Squad and Guardians, but that wasn't
J.K.
one of the
Simmons kind of did J. Jonah Jameson pretty close to being Commissioner Gordon, but that was only because the Snyder Cut was released so far after the initial release.
Oh, he was in that movie? I totally forgot about that. Holy shit.
Yeah, he's Gordon,
I totally forgot about that.
Commissioner.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds as both the Deadpool and Green Lantern, different versions. Josh Brolin, he was Cable and Thanos.
I mean, there's a ton of actors who've done both, but like within that same period is crazy to me.
No,
I think
but
that was the same year, wasn't it?
yeah, no, Tony's right. The Infinity War came out the same year as Deadpool 2.
That's right.
Like a month or two apart, which is
I
kind of
guess
crazy.
Those are both Marvel though,
True.
even though one was Fox at the time.
Yeah. It is a little bit different.
I guess plus, you're playing a one character with your face and then the other one's just a big purple alien. You can kind of get away with it.
Yeah.
Well, for people talking about people playing multiple characters, I mean, Oscar Isaac's doing 3 in one show. So.
I hear that Vin Diesel's been campaigning for a couple of characters to play live action because he's like, I don't want to do just Groot.
Yeah. Maybe his variant will be a group like that, like an actual tree or something. Who knows? That actually, this again might be a silly question, but do you guys think that Oscar Isaac like got paid more for doing both? I mean, he was like a pretty big character throughout. I mean, obviously the show's all about him, but in playing multiple characters, do they get paid more for that type of thing or no?
I doubt it.
Nah, they definitely couldn't. I wouldn't put it past them to try to argue that for the contract, to be like, look, this is going to be mentally exhausting. I'm playing 3 characters. Bump that up a little bit. But then they'd be like, no, you're playing Mark.
How many versions of Loki did Tom Hiddleston play?
True. You get like residual checks.
I'm genuinely curious. The Eternals talk got me interested, though. I did see the same thing last week in that it was rumored to be in the show. And not only that, but because they weren't in it, this is the first, I mean, not exactly a bold statement, but the first MCU show that we've seen that has no other crossover to other Marvel properties at all. Like there was, I mean, I think the only mention of anything else going on in the MCU was, then they mentioned Black Panther, but the Afterlife, I forgot what it's called. something
The
along
ancestral plane.
the ancestral plane. Yes, exactly. They do mention that. Beyond that, there is no other mention of anything else, which honestly I kind of liked. I think people kind of rely a little bit too much on, oh, this person's going to be in that, and there should be a cameo. And I love the crossovers, don't get me wrong, but I actually kind of like the fact this was its own entity. Were you guys a fan of that? Chris, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this show being very self-contained was kind of a smart move, because if they don't end up doing anything else with the character, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's
But,
true, yeah.
You know, you do come to expect that from Marvel now. Like, everything is so intertwined. So it was a little surprising that there wasn't at least one more slightly overt reference to something. Like, they were in London for a little while, reference the big fight from Thor, you know?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, no, there was nothing, like, not even like, not that anyone has to appear, but they didn't even reference like, oh, the Avengers or whatever, which they don't have to, which, like I said, I think was kind of refreshing. What about you, Phil? Did you like that, or were you hoping for something a little bit more as far as that goes?
I liked it. I liked that we didn't get another kind of contrived reference. I'm glad that we didn't have to reference the blip for the 1,000th time. And I like that this was more of a standalone thing. I like just the fact that this show seemed so different in tone and everything.
Yeah, no, it was vastly different than, like I said, I think that was part of the reason. The content of the show I thought was solid, but I thought the idea of it, the fact that it separated itself from everything else, and moreover than anything else, the acting, that was really what I enjoyed about the show the most. Tony, the fact that we didn't get any MCU crossover here, did you like it or not like it?
I'm kind of two opinions. I think, first and foremost, of course, the show has to withstand itself. You can't just go, okay, reference. Isn't this a good show? But despite that, I mean, I am the type of person who's like, you give me that little Easter egg, I'm going to mark out for it. We've even seen how Thor acts when he's here on Earth or something that I would have been like, that's the guy from the thing, like it's just sort of, the more obscure that it is, the better, especially if there's something where, I mean, we'll talk about when we talk about Doctor Strange and everything, but I love those moments of being like, that's whatever. And then, but if you get to go through an entire series and you don't have one of those, it's not like that's a negative for it. That just means that they didn't feel the need to put something in there. And if the Eternals would have popped up, especially the Eternals, which I didn't like, then I wouldn't have cared if it would have been like, hey, Druig is in a scene. I've been like, fuck that guy. Just kind of.
Yeah. No, that would have been interesting. I mean, it obviously will connect if they bring the character back to other stuff in some form or fashion. It's going to have to connect at some point. But no, to introduce the character, I thought it was totally fine. There was no real crossover there, which I liked. I don't think this was a report. It might have just been, I might be mixing this up with people, something that fans just wanted to say. But what about Blade? Now, I know we had heard a little bit from him, like briefly, or he was alluded to or whatever in the Eternals post-credit scene. But I heard some people saying that they either were thinking about him for this show in a cameo or a crossover, or people just wanted to see it. Do you think he would have fit into the show at all, Tony, or do you think that would have been completely random?
I can't imagine where they would have put him in here, but at the same time, I do want them to eventually do like a Midnight Suns movie where you just get Moon Knight, Ghost Rider, Blade, Werewolf by Night. It's going to be a TV show. So you mix them all together in the future, it's great. But if they would have just had Blade popping up here and suddenly there's a vampire attacking Moon Knight, that would have been really obscure.
What about you, Phil? What are your thoughts on a potential Blade appearance here in this show if we had gotten it?
I didn't think it needed it. I think that they should save the Blade stuff until they're ready to do it.
Do you think that's in the immediate future? Or do you think it's much further down the road if we get it?
It seems like it's further down the road. I mean, they've got the casting. It seems like they've got the production that they want to go with, being a director. I don't know if they have a writer yet. But yeah, I don't think they need to rush just because they know we have Mahershala on standby.
Yeah. Do you think, or what do you think we see him in next? If it's not that, if it's not the Midnight Suns, crossover at some point down the road, is there anything that you think will, not Blade, but Stephen Mark, Moon Knight, whatever? Do you think there's any one property that's already been established or still to come that you think, oh, he might work in this, even if it's a small role or a cameo or whatever? Or do you think it might be best to hold off on him until that comes about in a couple more years or so?
I don't know. It's hard to see where he fits because he's such a unique character. I don't know. It's weird. It would be really weird if we just got like the Marvels movie and he just like walks on the scene. It's like, what is he doing here? Like,
The Marvel.
He's pulling some magic act in Ant-Man.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you never know. With it being Quantumania, it's definitely possible. But what about you, Chris, as far as a potential Blade appearance in the show? Fan of it, not a fan of it? And the other part in being, where do you think we see Moon Knight pop up next?
I mean, it would have felt kind of random to throw Blade in there, but, you know, it's Marvel, so a lot of it's random. As far as where Moon Knight could show up next, just because the whole thing with the next Thor movie is that Gore is trying to kill all the gods, wouldn't necessarily be out of the realm of possibility for Khonshu to have something going on with that, but again, that might seem a little forced.
Yeah, that was another thing too. So I don't know if it was the director or someone else, but not that he was going to be in the show, Christian Bale, but they were going to make an avert obvious reference to Gore the God Butcher. In what way, what the context would have been, I don't know. But they had known enough about his character, just his presence being in the upcoming Thor movie, where they would have felt comfortable including him here. Again, same question goes. Do you think that would have been necessary? Not necessary, but would you have liked to see a reference made to it? Or do you like the fact that, again, it was its own standalone property, was Moon Knight?
I think it didn't need a Gore reference specifically like that. It just would have, because that would have confused some people who aren't familiar with what the next Thor movie is going to be.
Yeah, and that's the next movie we're getting, right? Is in July?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm really looking forward to that. That looks awesome.
No, that's
I'd assume if the release schedule would have been a little bit different, if Thor would have came out, they would have already dispatched Gore, because look, he's not going to kill Thor. It's not going to play out like that. And then they could have done something where Moon Knight came out afterward. They probably would have put some kind of like, it's a good thing that Gore guy is not killing us, kind of deal. But they can't put something out there prior to the movie and have it go over really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious how much of the release schedule has affected any of these shows as far as stuff they were going to include or took out. Like, I know for one, and we've talked about this before, but what's her fucking name? Jesus Christ, from Seinfeld. I'm the one who was in Black Widow.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yes, and what's her character? Vanessa? Not Vanessa, right? What's her name?
Oh, Contessa Valentina something or other.
Yes. I think she was supposed to be in Falcon and Winter Soldier and then pop up in the Black Widow post-credits. Or maybe not. Maybe actually that's inaccurate. I'm an idiot because Black Widow was already supposed to be out by the time COVID hit in like fucking May of 2020. So I'm way off on that. But it was supposed to be something like that. I don't know. But I know that was one example where they kind of switched some things around. So I'm kind of curious if anything would have been drastically different as far as this show goes and when shit came out. But one question I will end on this here. Chris, you mentioned this to kind of go full circle. You mentioned this at the beginning. Not a lot of chatter surrounding this show. Why do you think that is? And it's not because it wasn't a good show. Is it just because there's other stuff going on right now? Or is it not the Marvel hype is dying down, but obviously WandaVision was a different beast altogether. We've talked about this before, but when that came out, we were in a period where there was nothing Marvel for a very long time. Nothing Star Wars, nothing. So when that came out, we were all following it as soon as it dropped, talking about it as soon as it dropped. Moon Knight, by this point, this is what, our 6th Marvel show in the last year, with more to come. I think Miss Marvel's coming out in like a month from now. So why do you think that is, that it's not getting the same amount of buzz online that other shows have gotten?
I think it's a combination of nothing happened in the show that's going to affect the greater MCU, so you don't have that discourse. And then it's a character that isn't super mainstream, so there's probably a lot of people who are like, yeah, I can catch this one later.
Do you think this might be a better show to watch all at one time, or was it better? Because with WandaVision, I thought it was perfect, and I know people that watched it all at one time later on after it dropped. But like us, we talked about it every week. I thought it was even cooler as a weekly series because it kind of left you hanging from week to week. This had cliffhangers too, but not in the same vein. So do you think it's a show that's better consumed all at once?
I think that's all a matter of personal preference because I like the week-to-week release for some shows, and others I like to binge it all at once. Like, I was a big fan of being able to watch all of Daredevil at once, but I do think that a show like Falcon and Winter Soldier probably did benefit from the weekly release schedule.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the show. What about you, Phil? What are your thoughts on just I don't want to say lack of buzz, because I feel like there were people talking about it. But for me personally, if I didn't watch the show, if I didn't watch the Moon Knight show as soon as it dropped, because it dropped in late March, I think I caught up in the first 3 episodes at the same time. I didn't have to worry about spoilers on my timeline, because it didn't really seem like there was a lot of people talking about it. But again, that could be other circumstances too. So what are your thoughts, and what do you think contributed to the, again, lack of buzz? I don't know if that's the right term for this show on social media and online.
Well, I think it was a few things. It didn't have like this big reveal like Kingpin. It didn't have like this connection to a movie coming out like WandaVision did. And then on top of that, it's not like the COVID era Disney Plus shows where when those came out, that was the only Marvel content we were getting.
Yeah.
Now we're getting movies and all this other stuff too. So, you know, people are paying attention to several things at once. And also we're not all just trapped in a house. Only watch television.
Yeah, no, I think the same thing happened with Hawkeye, which was the last Marvel show before this one. But the series, season, whatever, finale dropped the same week as the movie. So, I mean, this dropped on Wednesday. The movie Multiverse of Madness dropped that Friday. So there really wasn't a lot of time to digest that before the movie came out. And obviously, No Way Home was one of the biggest movies they've ever done. And Hawkeye wasn't that like overly newsworthy of a show anyway. But it is interesting, the timing of these things. And I don't know if they can control that. Marvel Studios. I mean, it's all Disney, obviously, but I don't know. That stuff always fascinates me. Any thoughts, Tony, on the chatter, lack of chatter on this show? And I don't think it's a reflection on the show's quality, but kind of going back to what Phil and Chris said, just the lack of groundbreaking events as far as how it affects the MCU going forward.
It's definitely a perfect storm of a lot of those elements. And let's be honest. I mean, you've got name value in Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, but they aren't still absolute top tier mainstream, oh my god, I'm going to watch this show because of them type of actors. And the character itself has not been introduced elsewhere. You take a character that is established like Captain America, you put him on a TV show, people are going to go, oh, I'll watch the Captain America thing. Moon Knight's a whole nother investment. People are going to be like, all right, well, I don't know anything about this character. I've barely heard anything about it. Hulk, people know. Spider-Man, people know. And I know plenty of people that weren't really interested in watching Moon Knight, specifically because they are a little bit burned out. They just got through the Spider-Man hype. They were interested in what's happening with Doctor Strange. And in their mind, they're like, do I really want to invest 6 episodes and all these hours week to week on a character that I've never really heard of? Doesn't he just come off as like a Batman ripoff? And then you got to start arguing with them and telling them, well, this is the difference and all that. And that's just too much an investment for a lot of people. They don't want to go through and put that homework in. So if you don't put something out there that's the hook of the whole thing, as far as, you know, Moon Knight will directly go into the next movie, so you should definitely check it out before that. A lot of people are going to just be like, oh, I'll wait. I'll see it later. And then they might not even get around to it, period.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, especially I think what helped too for me as far as casual viewers that haven't seen the show, Oscar Isaac being in it and him just having the performance of a lifetime really helps as far as, I mean, we talk casual viewers with like wrestling and shit all the time, but like seriously, like if you don't follow this stuff hardcore, like if you see him in the show, I might be more inclined to watch it. And yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a perfect storm of all those things, as you just said. And it's interesting too, this I think was the biggest break in between shows. And there was a lot of anticipation for Moon Knight. I'm sure it did well streaming-wise. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't have them in front of me. But, you know, we went 3 months, I think, between Hawkeye and Moon Knight, and with no Marvel shows. I mean, obviously there was the Book of Boba Fett. There was Peacemaker, among everything else going on. But I'm just talking about as far as those 2 genres. And now we have Ms. Marvel coming out in literally a month. We have Obi-Wan Kenobi, which we talked about earlier. We previewed that last week. That's coming out in a couple of weeks, so... definitely no shortage of content going forward. So again, I don't want to rank all the shows because the list kind of grows every time we talk. But Tony, I'll start with you. Where does this fall in the list for you as far as the best Marvel shows we've seen so far on Disney Plus? The weakest? To me, it's probably towards the bottom. Not as a reflection of the show being bad, but just for some of the other shows being a little bit stronger.
I'll go so far as to point you in the direction of there's a link on my Fanboys Anonymous site. It's called All Marvel Cinematic Universe Movies Ranked in Order. And I decided to rank the TV shows as well. So every single one of them, all 34 entities are ranked right now. It gets exhausting sometimes putting this stuff in there. But Moon Knight is in my D tier, actually. It's number 24 out of 34. And it's still, I mean, there's only a few movies or TV shows that I genuinely didn't really enjoy all that much. Eternals being at the very, very bottom of this list. But, you know, Thor: The Dark World has its issues, and there's problems with Captain Marvel. But even if it's a D tier thing, it's still pretty damn good, you know? I mean, do you look at the way that things used to be in the past, and we're spoiled at this point because Moon Knight might not have been anywhere close to Captain America: Winter Soldier for me, or Guardians of the Galaxy 1 or Infinity War or something, but it's still rock solid. And I would recommend it to most people that are interested in anything that's across the board. You know, my wife being somebody who appreciates multiple things in that and isn't the biggest superhero fan, she loved it. So if that's something that you're interested in, check it out. If you are a superhero fan, check it out. It's Moon Knight, for God's sake. You know, I mean, we got this great costume and this multi-layered character fighting people and throwing his like moonerang or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's still fun as all hell. So it's on the lower end for me, but that's saying a lot considering they've had so much good content.
Yeah, no, it's more of an indication of everything else they've done, whether it's lower on that list or higher, of everything else just being that much better. And I think you put it perfectly in that I think the bar is just so high at this point for not just anything Marvel, but specifically the shows, because a lot of those shows last year were pretty damn good. And that's just what it's going to be going forward. And I haven't seen like a truly bad anything Marvel related since that first Iron Man movie. Again, some movies I really just don't give a shit about. I wasn't a big Eternals fan, but I'm not going to say it's a terrible movie. Just maybe compared to some of the other ones, it's a bit weaker. And I'm glad you mentioned the suit too, because we didn't have a chance to really talk about that. But the appearance of Moon Knight, he looked fucking awesome. So I thought they nailed that. And I thought the different, variant suits for like one for Steve and one being for Mark, and they looked a little different. I thought that was cool too. That was a nice touch. What about you, Phil? Where would you, again, not ranking every show, but towards the top, towards the bottom, somewhere in the middle as far as the MCU shows on Disney Plus so far?
Man, it's tough because I do agree that the bar is high. Like, I feel like WandaVision came out the gate really strong. I do think that I personally enjoyed it close to as much as I enjoyed like WandaVision and Loki, just because it was just different. It didn't seem as formulaic as some of the other stuff that Disney Marvel has done. But it's tough to rank it higher than like some of their better 3 shows. I would say it's around like 4, because we've got like 6 Marvel Disney shows.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, probably towards like the 4 or 5 range, I would say. Again, it's hard to say, and in my opinion, it's probably going to change tomorrow, but I would agree with that as well. Chris, what about you? Where would you rank this show compared to the other ones?
I mean, compared to the other shows, it's in the bottom half, just because WandaVision was so good, and I really, really liked Falcon and Winter Soldier. Loki was really good, so that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just it has really stiff competition.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think I would give it a hard recommendation for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, was waiting to catch up on it, or was waiting to see how it was. And as you mentioned earlier, Tony, as a character either you didn't know or were already familiar with, and for one reason or another, it's definitely a well-recommended show. And I look forward to Miss Marvel dropping next month as well, so we have that to look forward to. But before then, we will be talking Multiverse of Madness on the next episode dropping next week. Spoiler alert, we're actually recording right after we're done right here, where it's like we're taping 2 SmackDowns in one night. So we'll be doing that in a second. So Tony, you'll be sticking around for the next episode as well. I think the first special guest we've had for 2 consecutive episodes, so you will have that distinction, which is pretty cool. But we'll talk about it in the next episode. But where can people find you, Tony? I know you're on Twitter at ToeKneeMango. Toe, T-O-E.
It's all the body parts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the easy way to figure that out. Obviously, you have all your websites that you mentioned as well. So quick, cheap plug before we ride off into the sunset here.
Yeah, if you are interested in more stuff like the overall ranking and whatever chances I get to do anything on the superhero spectrum and the geek culture kind of side of things, Fanboys Anonymous is where you'll find that. I am hoping very soon to do some kind of a mock draft of DC and Marvel superheroes. So we've been doing a lot of that kind of content, and God knows what else I've got on the back burner that I haven't gotten around to. But you can find that over on fanboysanonymous.com. If you are following all of us, I'm assuming, on the pro wrestling stuff, you can check out smarkoutmoment.com. And if you follow Twitter and Facebook accounts, you can find things on Smart Out Moment and Fanboys and A Mango Tree. And you start clicking around on any of those sites, you're going to see a lot of links. So just follow me all over those places.
Perfect. Just type in your name and you can find pretty much everything you do right there. So thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you. Phil, you're on the Twitter machine. Phil DL616. Chris, you're on the Twitter machine on at BR_doctor on Twitter. Great speaking with you guys, and we'll talk Multiverse of Madness momentarily.